it seems like sugar is like the worst thing in our society when it comes to food. Is that a it seems like it's the worst.
Well,
is it
it's
not?
been weaponized as the high fructose corn syrup. Essentially, that's the fructose is the most common sugar in fruit as well. But when you take it and you weaponize it in the form of the high fructose corn syrup, it kind of becomes addictive. It's added to lots of foods just as a calorie content, also to sort of create the craving and the addiction piece of it. So, I mean, there's a lot of work done in the food industry to make you want to go back and buy something.
Yeah. I mean, and then too, I think it's a dirty trick. I mean, all of these artificial sweeteners. So sucralose, aspartame, NutraSweet, which now they've renamed, and so all of those. Now stevia, pure stevia, that's a leaf. That's something different.
Okay.
Monk fruit is something different. So those artificial sweeteners, they still elicit that same insulin response from your pancreas, but you don't have any sugars. Plus, they're a neurotoxin. Neurotoxin, and they're devastating to your GI tract microbiome. All the good guys that live in your gut that you want in there, it kind of kills them off.
Dr. Carl Paige and Terri Paige, welcome to the Necessary Entrepreneur.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah. So let's get into this and talk about your purpose, your passion, why you guys started MTC back in 2014. You spreading the word, this whole journey of life, being parents and raising kids, and you have a son 1 year younger than me. You guys are making me feel young today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So let's talk about, where's this whole thing start?
She's better at telling the timeline, so I usually have to ask her, what year was that? Yeah.
Well, part of it is really personal. So, we'll go down a little bit of a personal road because, to your point, what you see at one end of the spectrum isn't normally where people start. And it didn't just start like poof, everything is great. We're so successful. We're on it, And really, our story does start as two kids. I mean, we were in high school band together in Western Kentucky, and I think I liked him first. I just
our sisters manipulated our relationship, probably.
Yeah. I think they wanted to be related because they were friends, and so yeah. I mean, I
had no idea it was happening.
I was 13 when I decided I liked him. Okay, but we did start going steady. Gosh, that's been a long time ago, but. We were unsupervised kids in Western Kentucky. So I will tell you that we actually were teen parents. So we had our son when I was 16 and Carl was I guess you were 18. Yeah.
Just turned 18 when he was born.
And at that point, we really weren't sure we were going to be together forever. So, that took some time. I still needed to finish high school, so I did, and Carl was ready on a path to go to school. And you were the first. Well, I guess your sister had gone to college, but really, you were the first person in your family at all. Probably what's relevant too is for you to just share a little bit about why you became a doctor, because you didn't come from those roots.
Is she going to ask the question? Sure.
No, I love it. It's like, I did not sign up for this. I did not sign up to be interrogated on mic from her. This has been happening for 46 years. I'm not. She asked it. Let's go. Why'd you become a doctor, Terri? Carl.
Yeah.
I just see. She's so strong. I even called you by her name.
No.
Yeah, that's okay. I've been called worse.
Why'd you become a doctor?
I really was good at fixing things. I remember even as a 4-year-old, I didn't have toys. I mean, we were not wealthy, people, a family, but toys to me were like things I could take apart and try to put back together. So I did a lot of that, whether it was a clock or a old radio, just disassemble it. Sometimes I could get it back together. Sometimes I couldn't, but I enjoyed that process of an analysis, disassembly, and trying to figure out how something ticked or how something worked. So that's probably the earliest parts of it. Then during my childhood years, my dad was a retired World War II and Korean War veteran. So he had a 100% disability rating during combat action in Korea, and later died of his combat injuries. So we spent a lot of times in VA hospitals as a kid, going back and forth. So I was exposed to healthcare industry in that setting, and was intrigued by it. And then it was just a lot of what we were doing, going back and forth because of some of the health issues he had related to his combat trauma. And then I just decided I said, what I want to do, what's the best thing I can do? I mean, this was the 70s, it was still cool to be a doctor back then. There was, what is it? Medical Center or something. I can't remember the name.
Marcus Welby.
No,
Medical
Marcus
Center.
Welby. I like Medical Center. I liked 70s television, with cars and girls, and it was cool. And
is this Paducah, Elizabethtown? What is this?
Muhlenberg County.
Muhlenberg County.
Greenville.
There's some singers that talk about Muhlenberg County.
Merle Travis, is down there. It's like Mose Rager taught him. The Everly Brothers. That's all Muhlenberg County stuff. Now I wasn't born there. I was born in Homestead, Florida. So my dad moved there after, and when his family went there after he got out of the service, because he had spent most of his time in the Pacific Theater. So we lived in Homestead, which is south of Miami, for that's where I was born, at an Air Force base there. But then they had the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they're like, we're getting out of here, because they were scared. So they went back to Kentucky to raise the kids, and that's where I grew up, in rural Kentucky.
So it wasn't a planned journey. You just became aware of it through the VA.
Yeah. And we didn't, like she said, my dad was a laborer, grew up on a farm in Western Kentucky, really just dirt farmers essentially, and went away to World War II to get away from his stepmom. It's the story he told, because he was told some big stories. But, my mom lived in Muhlenberg County, and she grew up in the Depression, and it always really impacted her life a lot. So she would talk about that quite a bit, and made her decision. She didn't go to college. She went to work so she could pay for her sister to go to college. Right.
There's so many of these stories that came out of families of generations ago. We won't get off on track, but it's like I just want us to have those same principles and values that we used to have. Like, she did that so her sister could go.
Yeah.
I want to hear more of those stories. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that I really liked about Carl back in the day, what was so intriguing to me about him was
when you were 13.
Yeah,
okay.
was that he could fix things.
Just
Actually, it was that he could fix stuff. He was so different. Well, he was different from the guys in my family in terms of being handy and things like that. But I just thought that was the coolest thing. That he was geeky. He was geeky, and he could fix things, and he knew stuff about a lot of different things, which was different because I was a transplant to Western Kentucky too. I mean, my parents had moved from New York, and we had moved to Western Kentucky, so I was already kind of an outsider, and he wasn't an outsider, but he was unique, and that's what was interesting to me.
How didn't you become an engineer?
I had, when I went to college for my first year, I was very good at computer language. Back then you programmed. I mean, I was very analytical in that way, and at a time I thought I might do computers and medicine, which would have been a different path, but I really liked the science part of things, and engineering. I do like engineering, right? It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite television shows. Is like great engineering disasters, because you can see how people thought they knew what they were doing and they didn't quite get it right, and it messed stuff up.
So, the Hindenburg and all these things.
Yeah. So I like that. Yeah.
So when did you all decide that you were going to be together? Just last year.
Well, we decided it a few times over and over again.
Yeah. This is an evolving thing.
I hear some people say that they do it 1 year at a time. I've heard people say that. That's a different approach.
Well, our thing is like, I think I said it once. It was like that. People say, "Why? How are you still together?" And I was like, "Well, we never really gave up on the relationship both at the same time."
That's really true. That is really true. But I guess it was, I had our son literally in between my junior and senior years in high school. And then I went back to school and to graduate. And I knew that I needed to go to college in order, no matter what happened, right? But actually, I guess it was after he was born, we started to, kind of reconvene and think, oh, well, maybe this is a good idea. And Carl was away at school. And then when he returned after his freshman year, I guess that was when we got engaged. I was a young high school graduate. I graduated when I was 17. So we both were at the University of Kentucky. And after I turned 18 in January, we got married 2 weeks later.
Good for you.
So that's 40.
We didn't want to
It's
get
a
married
long
before she
time.
was 18. It was already bad enough.
It was a little over 42 years ago.
Talk about the judgment that you had to deal with back then.
Oh. Well, that's a good question.
You know, our
Gosh.
parents were very supportive, so I'll say that, you know, they I don't think they were like happy with it, but they, you know, they didn't abandon us or just say you're out on your own. So we had that piece. And what else? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think it's different for the male.
I knew she was going to have something different to say.
I'm
about this.
listening
Yeah.
here. I'm thinking it's different for the male than it is for the female.
I did what I could.
The you know, I've always, and this is good, bad, or ugly. Sometimes this is a great trait, and sometimes it's not. But I the way that I grew up, you just keep moving and you carry on and you act as if. And sometimes that's great, but sometimes it's not. You know, in certain situations. But you know, I mean, so for me, yeah, there was shame, of course, involved in that. But also knowing, you know what? Yes, this is a blip. So, you know, I've got a person here that I'm going to be responsible for. And I'm going to take the situation and do the best I can and just move forward. And some people were very judgy. Of course they were. But other people, I mean, I was a good student. I'm a very good people pleaser. I have those tendencies. So, you know, I think, you know, people generally were kind.
That's good. How many years do you think you jumped ahead on the level of maturity and responsibility? Like I really am, because, you know, you're 16 and 18, and without a baby, you travel this normal trajectory that we probably just elevate a little bit in maturity. But what do you think you jumped to? Did you jump 8 years ahead, 10 years ahead on where most people were? Because you're talking about ways that a 16-year-old girl, the way you were thinking, that's unique. I have this child. I have these responsibilities. That's not 16-year-old thinking. So were you already that person, or did you just become that?
You know, I for me
Yeah.
personally, I think, you know, my dad was an immigrant, and there's a philosophy, right? You know, people talk about that, and there it is kind of like, you know what, we're going to make it. We're going to hunker down. We're going to make it. We're going to make it work. And so I was raised in that kind of entrepreneurial too, you know, setting of you figure it out. And so that's just kind of who I am. Not always perfect, and a lot of mistakes made along this way.
I think that topic of mistakes along the way, I appreciate even when I try to provide context to that. But who hasn't? No one.
Yeah.
Right.
Like no one. I think it goes through our mind when we start talking about, hey, we figured it out and we worked it out. We're like, hold on, wait a minute.
Mhm.
All these people know all these things about us, so we also have to say, we all have. We all could go back in time, and you don't want to change anything because you're here with it. But you can go back in time and be like, well, that could have been done better.
Oh, for sure.
Wow, I could have treated that person better. That business decision. That's called life. The thing you talked about, you keep moving forward. That's the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Like that really is the secret sauce.
Yeah, bounce back up and keep rolling.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And you're going to use the failure or whatever we should have, but we're going to use that and try not to do it again.
You know, it was motivating to me because I knew that, you know, I really couldn't screw around. You know, I was in school on a what's called war orphan tuition waiver, which already made you have to, you know, you had to maintain grades, otherwise you know, I would have had to join the military or something to pay for college and medical school if I was going to do it without that. But it also kept me on track academically. So I was like, you know, I'm not going to screw around. You know, this is like I have a family at 18, so I've got to, you know, I got to be able to at some point pay for this. You know, yeah.
You got lucky too.
Yeah.
I don't invoke luck too much. I don't, because I think almost everything in life, a factor of earning it, there's a factor there of earning it. And we're fortunate through some things, but without laying it down and giving effort and having the right perspective, it's not going to come your way. But to have an 18, 19-year-old guy, in spite of all the things, him wanting to be done, and to have someone sitting here speaking to that, you got lucky in that, and you got lucky that a 16-year-old new mom had the perspective she had. Man, something about your families, your upbringing, the core of who you were, Because at 16 and 18, let's be honest. Come on. Come on.
Clearly,
yeah.
we weren't the epitome of responsibility.
So I think I'm excited about the rest of this conversation because that's who you all were at 16 and 18, and then these next 46 years. But before we continue forward, these 8 children, her eyes just lit up. These 8 children, how have you passed on the integral parts of who you all were onto them? How do you make sure that you feed and breathe enough into them and not make their lives too good, not too easy, not too entitled, and they come out still being a resemblance somewhat of the character that you two had?
I mean, we've gone from eating Spam to where they've, stayed at, 4 seasons, so it's like nice transition, but they've learned that along the way. It's not like we just handed them tons of money. I gave first one a nice car. I think he totaled 2 or 3 cars. So, I've made those mistakes with the kids and then made the decisions with the other ones. And now you're going to get an 82 Volvo this time, but
What do you think about this?
Well, again, I mean, at any given moment, people sometimes ask me, how are your kids or whatever? And I'll just say, well, at the moment, I think we're okay. But I mean, that's it. If anybody tells you that everything is great and they're, everything worked out well, they're lying. They're just lying. What we've tried to do is just at least show by the example, like what you were saying before earlier when we were just chatting. I know they're watching. And again, have they seen everything perfect? Absolutely not. But I would say that maybe the bulk of what we've tried to show them has just been that, put your head down, work hard, nobody owes you anything. You have to take responsibility because, I mean, ultimately we're all responsible, especially as adults, for things that happen. It could be an accident, it could be this, but there's some level of responsibility in whatever situation. Did I choose to be there? Did I choose to engage with this? Did I, all of that. And so I would just hope that has bled off on them. And, and again, depending on their age, maybe
44 looks different than 19.
Oh, so much.
Right?
So much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much.
I mean, early on for me, I was gone a lot because between, medical school, residency, work, I mean, I was working, hundreds of hours a week, so there was a little bit of an absentee parent there from a work commitment standpoint. So Terri did a lot of the very early stuff with the kids, and we didn't have all the kids all at the same time. We had 2 of them, early on, and then we didn't have them for a little bit, and then we had 6 and 7 years, and that was a transition, I would say. You have to change how kids demand that you change what you do. There's no you don't get to do what you want to do, then you do what you've got to do. So,
What was the reason for that laughter?
well, it's just hard. I mean, I think about these little kids. The first ones were easier, because we didn't know what the fuck we were doing.
There you go. He invoked it. We're doing it. Just so you know, every time the guest starts that off, it gets unleashed. I'm going to try to contain myself. I'm going to try to be a responsible human.
Oh, my.
Just so you know, I love it. And she's like, no, you didn't. Yes, he did.
He just did.
So has life raising these kids and being parents, has it just been funny?
Funny?
Well, he laughed about it when he was thinking about the next generations.
It's been a lot of fun, and it's certainly not been without stress. Still is to this day. My mom used to say, you never really stop being a parent. It's a lifelong commitment. So, yeah.
I mean, we have 3 grandchildren, and these 8 kids. Our youngest just turned 18, so it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. There was a lot of joy. What was nice about those 6 that we had in 7 years, it was a different time of life. I mean, I had number 3 when I was 35.
And then
we had number 8 when I was 42.
Okay, you're going to have to talk about this. We're going to get into business real quick, but what changed? What happened at 35? This was a decision.
It was. You want the real story?
Yeah, I want the real story.
Okay. He wants the real story.
Go ahead.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'll tell you.
I'll
this.
hit the red button here.
It'll just stop yours. He'll be over here hitting my red button.
It'll be the first fight we've had at the table.
I mean, as you can tell, our life started out really fast, in a way that, wasn't the normal trajectory. And, and our two children that we have, our early children, they're wonderful, wonderful people. And but we were in different stages of life when we had both of them. And so by the time I was 30, right, I was always the youngest mom, right, in the room. And by the time I was 30, I was, we had started a practice. My original background is I was an accountant. That was my original background. And that's what I did before, when Carl was in medical school and residency. That's how we earned money. And then, I was in the first practice that we started that together, hung the shingle, did all of that. But there was a period of time where I stepped out of that once we had some partners in that business, and I stepped out and I was going to be doing some other things. And it was the first time in my life personally that I'd gotten quiet and just started to reflect and think about, well, what is it that I want to be doing? What is it that, that fills my heart? And, it was a confluence. I really started down a faith journey, trying to understand my faith more, not from the context of, well, this is how you're raised, but more about understanding. And I grew up Catholic, which, obviously I had some hiccups in that regard, and just started to delve in as an adult and try to understand that. And also too, what was it when I was a little girl that really was an aspiration for me? And, I actually wanted a big family when I was young, a long time ago. But circumstances happened, and, we were just trying to make it, and feed ourselves, feed our kids, that type of thing. And we got into a spot where we finally had, we had a little bit of money in the bank, which, and it was just a different time. And I just decided, and we had this conversation, I want to be open if God wants to send us more kids. I just want to be open to that. Right. And we laugh now because apparently he didn't want to send us more kids, and I was old, so he had to give them to us in 7 years. But yeah, so we were just open to, who God wanted to send us, and he sent us 6.
Yeah, 6 and 7 years was
it was a lot.
It was a lot. Yeah, people ask me about it and what was it like to do that, and I said, I don't know. I blacked out. I said it was just kind of, I was so either at work. I was at work. I was at Costco. I was at Sam's. I was at Kroger's. And then the babysitter would go home when I got home because couldn't afford her all day long. And I'd cook at least one meal and do laundry. I mean, it was the last two were the roughest because she was in bed.
Yeah, he's referencing babysitter because I had some trouble with that last one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I literally say I blacked out and it was fun. I mean, I enjoyed it. I don't want to say that, but it was just a blur of motion. I mean, it was just something nonstop.
It was nonstop.
Yeah.
It was nonstop. Yeah, and we homeschooled ultimately I homeschooled about 11 years, and there was just a lot of joy in that because we were in a spot. I mean, and primary care physician, which is what Carl was forever. I mean, those are not big money makers. So it wasn't like, oh, we're just rolling in this dough and we can do whatever. But again, back to your point, you're frugal, you make it work. And, we say we invested in human capital as opposed to, other assets.
Right.
Still we're invested in human capital, which is a blessing to be able, to do that. But there was a lot of joy.
I don't want to say primary care doctor. Doctors make a lot of money. Primary care doctors make on the lowest end of the totem pole, right? And they probably work the hardest. Right. It's sort of an inverted system of reward versus effort.
Well, but I mean, you make it work.
Yeah. Did you ever did you get the grades in medical school to go into a specialty?
Yeah, I was in the top 10 in my class. And I did,
So why'd you choose internal medicine?
I wanted to do what I thought was what I liked. I didn't want to do. I wasn't looking. There was people in my class that they just what I can make the most money at, right?
Yeah.
And that's why what they chose their career path on. That's not the way I processed that type of data.
So the last two were tough, right? From a health standpoint, and that's what started this next journey, right? That we're on here of the evolution of business and what you guys are going to build. So not Jeff, but what do you want to share about that?
It was just kind of a culmination. I had already started. I was kind of set up from actually being a little girl, was just some underlying predispositions. And by the time I got to, 42 years old, dietary choices, genetics, all of the different things, I was a mess. Just my GI tract was a mess. My immune system was kind of shot. I was getting, just weird stuff popping up about every other month. I was about 60 pounds overweight. I would tell you I don't eat that much. Fatigue, fibromyalgia, all of those things, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, autoimmune
Inflammations
issues,
all over the
all
place.
of the things. And, it kind of came to a head. I would get, it kind of came to a head at one point. Carl came home and I had I would get kind of like this shingly type outbreak every other month. And he came home one afternoon and from his office and it was there again. And I was kind of like, here it is. I'm like, I forget how old I was, maybe 44. Here it is again. What are we going to do? And he, started down that path of, well, did you take your pills? Basically, did you take your medicine to treat what had just occurred? And that was that point where I kind of went across the aisle. And I don't know if you remember this, but I came across the aisle and grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and told him I didn't work. So you could go to medical school. So you could tell me to take a pill.
Yep. Yeah.
And, figure it out.
Yep.
You like to understand why.
Yep.
So just do that now for me instead of just telling me to take medicine because I'm too young for this. I got
treat
things
me
to
like
do.
one of your patients.
Yeah.
I'm just, but
Yeah.
it's like, hey,
and back then, that was more, that was the paradigm, right?
Yep.
Here's a symptom, here's a diagnosis, here's a med. And so it started him doing what I knew he could do, which was like to go backwards and start to study. And so about 3-4 weeks later, he comes back to me and he says, I don't think I can help you unless you change your diet. And I think you have something called, I think you're overgrown with candida and I think you've got leaky gut. And that's probably a big reason of what's wrong with you. So read this book and do what it says and let's see what happens. And I was desperate. So of course I did it. And it was, it was at that point, it was an old school yeast elimination diet, which was torture, but actually it worked. And I'm like, finally.
Yep. Was that, and also you're talking about a touchy subject, a spouse talking to the other one about weight.
Weight wasn't my issue. I hated being overweight,
Yeah.
but that wasn't the concern.
Okay.
He was a little soft, but it was like,
of course I was. I just told you I
had
was.
all the kids and hadn't been able to exercise and all that.
The issue for me
Yeah.
was the chronic fatigue,
Yeah.
the fibromyalgia, the inability to stay well, all of those things. And really what he was telling me, and this is something that we educate our patients on all day long now in Medical Transformation Center, is the connection between the health and integrity of your GI tract and the rest of your system and how that shows up in disease
See,
and
GI
inflammation.
tract part of the gut and all this, like, so is it, because I hear the gut's like our second brain or something. Is that connected to the?
Oh yeah, where your neurotransmitters.
Yeah, I
are
was
made
struggling with anxiety and depression, all
Yeah.
kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot going on there.
Okay.
And that was, so much of the root of it is that I needed to get that back in integrity. And then lo and behold, as I started to get healthier in that way, actually weight started to come off. And so again, that was wonderful, secondary gain on that. But my biggest problem, sore spot, was that I felt like crap.
Well, for me, that really drove, in primary care, the good thing about it was, I enjoyed it for a long time and still have a lot of respect for those people doing that. But it made me an encyclopedia of traditional allopathic Western medicine sick care. I saw everything for everybody from newborn to 99-year-old dead and deliveries and babies. So you really had, I think I counted it up, it was hundreds of thousands of direct patient interactions with people and living their experience in that space. So it really made me just to be an encyclopedic exposure of knowledge to that. So, but after a while that things weren't connecting, this linear model of you have a problem, therefore you get a particular large industry pill for it, didn't intellectually make sense to me. So I was already kind of in that space as trying to put some of this together. And what's missing? What did they not teach me in medical school? There's things that.
So what did they not teach you? Without spending 8 hours, because I'd love to hear it all, but what did they not teach you?
They didn't. Western allopathic medicine looks at it starts with the problem, and then you have a solution for the problem, which in today's 21st century comes directly from large pharma industry. It's like that's the only solution. You need a massive intervention with a device or an implant, or you need a bucket full of pills, and that intellectually did not make sense to me. We're not fixing people. My line was, we're managing your demise, slowing it down. That's really where it comes. And if you understand the statistics of how they bring a product to market to get this relative improvement versus absolute improvement, if you look at statistics, it's frustrating when you look back at it to realize how the wool's pulled over your eyes on a lot of things in that space. And you get I would say in a traditional healthcare training, a little bit of a propaganda feed, essentially. And that's the way we learned.
And you're in the system, it's probably to see outside the bubble.
You cannot see outside of the box, but I had the ability to see outside the box. And that's really, and Terri, says you have to see outside the box.
So this helped you. This was the
when the
path.
squeaky wheels in your
impetus.
house, it's a little louder.
Right. So, and I'd already had some of these ideas in my head. I just didn't have a impetus to move forward in that direction. So that really allowed me to take some of that thought that was in my head, and really, I knew that it wasn't right. A lot of the things we were doing in traditional healthcare weren't fixing anything.
It's just keeping us alive,
just
and keeping us
you
upright
alive
and
longer.
moving.
Yeah.
So keep going here.
Well, so as I started to improve, it was great. I
Is this
started to come
after
back
you
alive.
let the collars go and stop you?
Yeah, and but then I started to make those changes, and I started to see improvement. We started to make some different changes in our family, just in the way that we looked at nutrition, all of those different pieces, and I started to come back alive, which was wonderful. And this was at the same time. So this was like 2008. Okay. 2008, 2009, the whole world of healthcare was changing too, right? Then not only did we have the recession, right, which changed kind of the complex health, just
It changed the
people's
economics
situations,
of everything,
the
didn't it?
economics. But it also, that was healthcare reform, right? 2008. And so we were kind of watching things shift and change in the business. At the time, I hadn't been in the business in several years, probably about, I guess, maybe 10 years. I hadn't been in the business for 10 years. But as we were seeing things change, as we got closer to 2010, what we decided in 2010 was that I would go back into the office for a year. That was 2010. A year, and we would create change. We would start to build a model that was based more on wellness. And we were still a traditional insurance-based primary care. We were kind of small at that point. We'd had some changes in our business model, and we had, we were small then. And it was just going to be a year. We were going to put in more focus on wellness, prevention. Carl had, as we got older with our patient base, because we grew up that practice out in Oldham County, from 1992 until at this point, 2010, we were getting older. Our patients were getting older. People were asking us about like hormones and what should I do about that? So Carl was curious about responsible use of hormones and how to do that. And he'd gone to some classes, and we were trying to find our spot. And we went to a seminar in 2011, and that was actually the spot where we found the organization that ultimately Carl ended up doing his advanced fellowship and board certification. I did certified lifestyle coaching, and we did a lot of education through that group to make that transition. It was the American Academy of Anti-Aging, Regenerative, and Functional Medicine. And so we really thought that we would just kind of deliver this type of care in our insurance-based primary care center. We grew it. We expanded the facility. We added more physicians. I mean, at the end, we were like a 10,000 patient practice.
Wow.
It was huge. And we were one of the last ones standing, because so many folks, especially this was 2012, 13, 14, 15, so many folks had already been, assimilated into the large systems. After about into 2013, we just decided, this is a square peg in a round hole. We need to separate it.
There was.
We're talking hormone replacement. Like, is this that's what my brain
That was
hears.
probably
That
our
was the initial. Go ahead.
initial foray into that space.
Okay.
So we learned, because many of the patients, the OBs in 2000 sort of said, we're no longer giving anybody hormones because of some mistakes they made. And they stopped. And then there was a lot of patients who were like, wait a minute, I don't like this. What are we going to do? So I went and learned about that the best I could, and we're able to offer some of that to those patients that had sort of been left in the cold by the traditional OB model. But when we tried to introduce that way of practicing into the traditional practice, there was no valuation of it at all. In fact, it was devalued by the insurance companies. They didn't care less. The hospitals didn't care about it. The insurance didn't care about it. They spoke a lot to it and always had health initiatives for their insurance, but they were just pick a monitor, measure it, say it got better. There was just playing with numbers, but they weren't really making people healthy, even though they said they were trying. So for me, it was like I would present this to all of the patients. About 10% of them were interested. So 90% of people didn't really. It was just like, give me my pills. I'll be back in 6 months. They weren't interested, or they weren't engaged in that space. 10% of people or so were, and they liked it. But, we were sort of fighting a losing battle. I was working really hard, but it literally didn't pay for itself.
Well, I think you got to back up a little bit, because to your point, we're not just talking about hormone replacement therapy.
No, we were doing full lifestyle modification, exercise, use things that maybe you can introduce before you need a medicine.
Going upstream
using some traditional repurposed Western medicines off label to help people get to a spot where they maybe didn't need to take medicines.
This is overall life coaching here. I mean, that's what this is. It is.
It required a lot of coaching. Yeah.
Looking at genetics, looking at predispositions, looking at gut health, gut permeability, nutrient deficiencies.
We were doing a lot of advanced things with the patients.
Panels,
right.
Yeah.
And you guys were before. I mean, this has just been really in the past 3, 4, 5 years that this has really become.
Well, we got punished for
we
it.
were
Literally,
doing
we got
this in
punished. I would have
2011.
people, the insurance companies didn't like it. The labs didn't like it because it was affecting their margin. People would show up in our office weekly going, why are you ordering these exotic tests and looking at these things on patients that, nobody else is looking at? It's like, I'm doing my job. I'm trying to take care of
blood panels at a different level, like all sorts of things,
way more in depth.
Back then we were doing ones that were like he's talking about, you get in trouble for ordering, right?
Yeah.
Now they're standard of care.
Yeah.
So that's really where we've tried to be, is up there at the tip of the spear. Because to your point, I mean, we're talking about doing this back in 2011, 12, 13. You're right. Today, now you see it online, you see it advertised, that kind of stuff.
People that don't even have the background you guys have. I mean, really.
Oh, yeah.
I see it. And I think this is a great conversation for so many people to have, because we're out here, we're being fed a lot of information now, and we just don't know what the reality and the truth is. And I'm sitting here with you guys today. I'm like, you know what? You guys are like, this seems trustworthy. This is believable. The wife, like, you have to put someone's total life and intent and their values together. And I'm like, you guys really care about doing this right. I mean, we want to have businesses and we want to scale things and live a great life, but you all care about doing this right.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you like these types of conversations, be sure to follow The Necessary Entrepreneur on your favorite platform so you never miss out on future content.
Well, I always say if you do it right, you'll be successful. Now whether or not you're very profitable at it's a whole other thing.
Well, I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, we used to actually, for example, we used to use the term functional medicine back in 2011, 12. It was something nobody knew about. Unfortunately today we actually try not to use that term because, you could do a weekend seminar and become a functional medicine expert now.
What's functional medicine mean? Even though you're not trying to, what's it mean?
Well, the concepts are really from the roots up, as opposed to the traditional allopathic model as you look at the leaves, and that's blood pressure or diabetes. Whereas in a functional concept, you would look at the roots, what lifestyle, genetic, nutritional, environmental things led to that problem.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It just makes sense.
Yeah.
So we're 2014. I'm interested too in the entrepreneurial part of like the moments of like, are we stupid? Are we really going to do this? We're going broke all the time. I mean,
God, yeah. I was selling
my
guitars
gosh.
and stuff just to play for stuff. It's like, we had to struggle for a bit.
I knew there was some musician stuff in here. I knew it. When I said we're raising a bunch of hippies, I knew there was something here. He's a guitar player, hon. It just now came out.
He has been playing musical instruments. When did you start? Like when you were 5?
I don't know. A long time ago.
Yeah.
Just normal guitar playing some folk songs or what?
Well, my uncle used to play in some country bands, so he taught me some country music, and then of course during my younger years, I loved rock and roll and the blues and all that, and played that.
Isn't no Sturgill Simpson from your all's part of town now?
I don't know.
I think he sings about Mecklenburg County too. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
And the Green River and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
That was John Prine, right?
Yeah, but
John
Prine's,
Prine,
John Prine,
But multiple guys now, they're coming along
Oh
singing
yeah,
about it.
yeah. Well, there's not much else to do down there.
So how many instruments does this guy play?
You know,
Primarily guitar.
I mostly play stringed instruments
stringed
now.
instruments,
and,
yeah.
You know, I was last night. I got a bunch of those, but you know, yeah.
You got
Well,
do you
because
have a
not only-
mandolin? Do you have all those things, huh?
Not only does he play them, but you see back to that fixing stuff. So another hobby is he gets them off of eBay or wherever, like all messed up and gross, and then he refurbishes them.
And resell
sometimes he
them.
keeps them, sometimes he
I don't
sells
sell
them.
as many as she'd like me to. I don't
Well, it's
think.
okay. I mean, but you know, it keeps his brain sharp.
Yeah. So if we walked into the Paige's home and there was an old vinyl player sitting there, I'm not supposed to call them vinyls. I'm probably supposed to call them something. What am I supposed to call him, Dave?
Just call it a record player.
A record player. He's a musician too
Yeah,
back here.
yeah.
Yeah. What would be playing?
Jazz.
Yeah, most of my stuff is 50s, 60s jazz. I'm kind of in that space now, and occasionally they can sing if they want to.
But you're not a brass guy. You're a string guy.
Well, I played brass when I was in high school.
That's
Yeah,
how
yeah.
I liked him.
There you go.
He was a trumpet player.
Trumpet player
I played
and
the
clarinet.
drums. No. I played the drums.
Huh?
I was percussion. I can count really well.
You're all the ones that keep everybody on.
I can count really
Yeah,
well, but
yeah.
I have a little trouble making that transition from what note is that to where am I supposed to?
Do you guys read music or no?
I read music. Yeah.
I read the counts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all the entrepreneurial moments of like, we're going broke, we have no money, we have all these kids. Should we just have I
Cash?
messed
What's
up here?
that?
Should I go back to the old way just to get paid?
Oh, we went through that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that
yeah.
story. Oh, we
Yeah.
were talking about that on the way up here.
Well, we, to get to that spot where we had to leap off, we had made that, we started the practice and sort of did a hybrid model where we did the traditional primary care and then half day a week, 1.5 days a week. We did the new practice, the MTC practice, where it's more the, cellular regenerative medicine space. And after we had done that for a bit, we realized that at some point I'm going to have to be over here all the time. It was really of a dichotomy in my brain that I couldn't go into the room with one patient and say, here's your 6 pills for diabetes, blood pressure, heart disease, and then go in the other room and then say, look, you don't need all of these if you just eat right and you get your gut healthy and you maybe lose 30 pounds. You could not have to take these pills but that, like you said, was a coaching process. It required a lot of, interaction with that patient to keep them on task and hold them accountable and make sure they were able to execute. So we at some point had to move into that space. So we had to sell the primary care practice, which was, again, it was very, and this was the thing that probably tipped it over the edge was the introduction of computer records because that was that financially tipped it over because
the accountant doesn't want to talk about the responsibility.
No. Well, we had to do that. Actually, there was no choice.
Yeah.
In 2012, that era, you had to go on electronic health records or else you were penalized. So we didn't have a choice to do that. But no, what I mean is that was already happening. We already wanted to be in a different space, but
wanting it and getting there is a path.
I'm the one that goes,
yeah.
Like I'm the push off the edge person, right? Could you tell that?
Yeah,
already?
well, I can now.
Yeah,
In the last 5 minutes, I was like, okay, I'm getting this more.
I'm the push off the edge.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about it.
He's the engineer. He's the reasonable person. Here's the steps in the process. Now, hold on. Let's make sure the plan's in place. Now, this doesn't feel, and you're like, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. We'll course correct as we need to. It's okay.
Yeah.
We'll course correct.
And it's, but that
works out okay.
Yeah, but I was going to
together.
say that probably actually has been a really good balance in life, even though it felt uneasy at times.
Mhm.
If both of you were all one way or the other, it might have
Right.
been disaster.
Exactly.
Sure.
And that's really, I think, why, thankfully, we've been able to do this because literally we've been in business 32 years together. I mean, so to be able to do that for this long, I think it's because we have so
complementary
many
skill sets.
complementary
Is the way I would
skills.
say.
When
Yeah.
you said that, he smiled. That we've
Yeah.
been in business for 30-something years, he smiled.
Did you smile? That is so sweet.
Yeah.
He's still my boyfriend.
Well, I can tell you
She
guys
gets
have
to sleep with the boss.
Hey, you know
that's
what?
like-
This is big time stuff here. Where's HR? Where's HR around
Hey,
here?
and wait a minute, who's the boss? Hold on.
No, listen, we are not. You absolutely are. we're not getting off of this thing. You 100% are the boss, right? He has the title, but you're the boss. Oh, your kids, what you've just done to them. The 2 older are fine with this. The other 6
are
are like,
oh, that is so gross. That is so gross. Okay, never mind. Stop.
all right,
Just
so
stop. Okay, so let's go back to the jump off the
yeah,
edge.
here we are.
You asked a question. I'm trying to keep you on task and answer it.
Well, I'm trying to take us in a nice timeline. You guys are so damn fun. I'll jump all over the place.
All right,
So,
let's get
yes.
off. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm going to answer your question.
Thank
How
you.
about that?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mom just told me I better back off here, right? She has a son 1 year younger than me. I'm about to get talked to here.
You're gonna get the
Smack
smackdown.
down.
Yeah, it's the unhappy eye. I think that's what he calls
The mad
it.
eye, happy
the mad
eye.
eye.
Oh,
Yeah, the mad
man.
eye. Anyway, okay.
So the jump off.
So 2014,
Yep.
that was really an inflection point for us. I mean, we were trying to make them both work. But it was just so hard, like he said, to be able to say one thing one day and another thing the next. And we were really, quite frankly, getting beaten down with the whole environment of. It was a hostile environment towards private practice back then, because literally, I mean, that time frame, that was when, there are no private practices left now unless they're large multi-specialty groups or direct primary care.
Makes me
things like
sad
that.
because at my heart, that's the doctor I want.
It was
That's the doctor I want.
there was some engineering
been
to that.
intentionally
Yeah, there was some
destroyed.
engineering
Yes.
to that, but we don't have to go down that path just
Yeah.
right now. That's another day.
Okay. See, she told me.
No, I just
It isn't. It's a whole nother.
it really is
it's
a large
hours.
it's a large conversation. So what we did was we shopped the practice out to the institutions that were there in our market at the time, and only one of them would let us keep Medical Transformation Center. The other 2 wanted us to shut it down.
That's ridiculous.
So
That's
and-
why
and
should they even
they had
care?
no
basically-
vision. Well,
right.
they wanted me to be a widget in their game.
Yeah,
That's
they
what it
wanted
was,
Carl just to bring the 10,000 patients and
And be the
carry
doctor
the party
still.
line. Yeah, be the indentured servant.
Yeah.
So we did sell to the one that allowed us to keep it. It was a lovely setup. I mean, it was supposed to go for 4 years. So this was 2015. We closed that deal. We were super excited. Carl, whenever you sell a medical practice, the physician does have to go work for that entity for a while. That's kind of how they amortize.
It was a 4-year contract.
Yeah, it was a 4-year contract.
It's always 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Right? It always is.
Yeah.
Which and so the sum for what we had built over 28 years was amortized over that.
Earn it out.
Well, they stopped it in 2 years.
The fine print.
No,
Yeah,
they went out of business.
they had
essentially.
financial difficulties, that particular hospital system there in Louisville, which was really scary. But it was one of those moments, right? So it's 2017. We were not ready. I mean, he was seeing patients in Medical Transformation Center a day a week. And so we were in timeshare, no overhead. We hadn't built out a full scale. We weren't ready to go because we were thinking it was 2 more years down the road. And it was kind of abrupt. So just a few months to plan. And that was one of those moments where we said, okay, what do we do? Do we go backwards? Do you just go work for one of these other 2 and we just forget about Medical Transformation Center? Or do we jump? And so we did what any reasonable couple would do. We went out west and took
we
a
went
road
to
trip.
California. Yeah. So my old BMW station wagon literally about at the same time died.
Northern California, please don't tell me San Francisco.
No, we went to Studio City in
gotta
LA.
tell us-
So
yeah.
so I my old car died. So I like station wagons. So I found a used Cadillac station wagon in Studio City that had only 5,000 or 6,000 miles on it, and it was about 3 model years old. So I bought it over the internet, and I was trying to figure out how to ship it. And it was going to cost $1,500 to ship it, maybe $2,000, depends on the place. And I just looked around and I said, why don't we fly out there and then drive it back? So
Now, let's be real clear
yeah.
about this. You said, I don't know. What do you think? Should we do that?
yeah.
And I said, you know what? If not now, then when are we ever
When are we ever going to do that? So we flew into L.A. and we spent the night in the Fisherman's.
No, Sportsman's Lodge.
Sportsman's
the old Sportsman's
Lodge,
Lodge, that classic
where Frank
old hotel.
Sinatra and John Wayne and all them stayed, and it was literally on the edge of becoming a homeless shelter at the time. But we spent the night there, and
then we
swashed
drove
the
up.
heroin needles out from the front door.
stop
Now it
it,
was
stop
pretty
it,
bad.
stop it.
It was pretty bad, right?
All for a Cadillac SRX.
No, it was a CTS wagon.
Ooh.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was it
Performance.
was
This is-
Katherine
yeah.
Heigl's.
Yeah. It was
Katherine
actually
Heigl's.
Katherine Heigl's station wagon. So we got there in the she had bought this car when she thought she was going to adopt 2 kids. And then when she found out that she was getting the kids on the way to pick them up, she found out she was pregnant. So this car she bought that, at least this is the story they told us, it wasn't big enough for our kids. So she went down and traded on a new Escalade and just turned that car in and let it sit there. So that's why it hardly had any miles on it. So we drove it from
from the homeless shelter stepping on needles.
Yeah. Pretty much. It was, and it was.
So we drove it.
Well, we did go to see the Brady Bunch
California.
house while we were there because it was about 4 or 5 blocks
Yeah,
from
we
there.
did. We did.
Yeah, we walked over to there. Yeah, we had to go do that. Yeah.
So we drove up. We actually drove up the coast, which was an
All the way.
adventure. We'd always wanted to do that. We drove
Gosh.
up the coast. We have a business coach that we have worked with for several years, and we drove up to see her in Sonoma County.
And we went up to.
And we spent
yeah.
time and just did kind of that mapping out, like what shall we do? What shall we do? Can we do this? And we created this vision, and it was interesting because you know how you write things out, right? In 5 years, this is what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
And you have no idea how you're going to get there. So really that's important, right? You know, is to put it down, write that vision down, even though you don't know how in the world it's going to happen, because your brain, you map towards it, your actions map towards it, your brain maps toward it. So it was really astonishing, wasn't it, to go back in 2022 and read what we had written in 2017 of what we wanted to create.
So has it become that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were
Plus.
saying that on the way up here.
Yeah.
It's really, we hit the milestones on that. And, you know, if you're.
And one of them was crazy. It was like we were just going to be living in a home that was XYZ. We lived in that same place for 28 years and no plans to fix it up enough to sell it. And even that happened crazily. Somebody just wanted to buy our farm, came off the
So this
street.
is like some manifestation stuff.
It's, a lot of different terms for it, but I mean, I really do think we map towards it, right?
Right.
We
had
you
the
put it in your
intention
subconscious
there,
and you go
and-
through, you map towards your intentions.
And those things were there. We were able to see them then because we had the intentions. And then we had, so we had some good fortune and
just some blessings.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's it. It was just some blessings. But so when we came back, we decided to go all in. And
we did drive
just
all the way across the
make it
country in this
happen.
Cadillac, which was a whole lot of
It
fun.
was
I will
so
say.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a
What's
great
the
time.
best place you stopped? I've made that drive. I started in Chula Vista in south of San Diego and then flew out of Seattle 6 weeks later.
We went
That
to,
drive was
we
awesome.
drove all the way from LA up to
Sonoma County.
Sonoma County, just
Mhm.
north of the bay. And then we went to Bodega Bay where they shot the birds and drove
Yeah,
from
because we just
there
wanted to go to the
to
courthouse.
Tahoe.
Yeah.
And then we went from Tahoe to Death Valley. We got to Death
Gosh,
Valley
that was
about
so cool.
midnight in the middle. It was so dark there.
And you could really see those eyes. You know how you say you
Yes.
could, it was amazing. It was probably not responsible to be down at the bottom of Death
we got
Valley
out and
at
walked around in
midnight,
Death Valley in the middle of the night. And
Probably not.
Don't tell your
No,
kids.
probably
Don't tell
not.
our kids.
well, we heard
Yeah.
these little things like fluttering across the ground, and I said, "What is that? You hear that?" And she goes, "I hear that." And I said, "Maybe we get back in the car." So we got back in the car, and I flipped on the lights, and there was probably 40 coyotes just sitting out there, just kind of
Yeah.
checking us out.
It
you
was
know?
cool. I mean, it was very cool. So we drove Death Valley, and then to Vegas. Then we went up to
We went
Santa
to
Fe.
Santa Fe. Yeah,
I would say personally, the coolest place was Santa Fe for me.
Death Valley. I'll have to say because we drove into that area before dark. It was so huge that I take photos as another hobby, and I was like, I don't have the equipment to take the photos of this. This
Oh, how
how
spectacular
It was
spectacular and
amazing.
huge it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just such a.
But it was a watershed. That was a watershed trip for us, and we came back resolved just to make it happen, figure
Just
it
you
out.
two together?
Yeah.
None of the kids.
No, all 8 of them were back at home. Everybody was hunkered down together. Our adult kids came and watched our other ones, and we were gone 10 days.
Yeah. We just did
Yeah.
a big road trip. It got kind of boring after Oklahoma, but I did get to about 130 in New Mexico in a Cadillac. Yeah,
There
it
you
was-
go.
Yeah, it was right.
There you go.
And
How'd
can-
you feel about that?
Some things it's better. I don't know. He asked me, he said, how fast do you think we're going? I said, 80, 90. Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of the coolest places I ever drove. It sounds like you were south of it, but the wheat fields of Kansas
Mhm.
were just awesome. Western and central Kansas, and then it pretty much ends around Manhattan. There's some parts of this country that are just incredible.
Yeah.
You guys went and did it for 10
You
days.
can't see it from the sky. You can't see it on a television. You just have to go do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for you guys.
And you can't do it in an electric car because there's not enough places to stop.
Maybe one day. I don't know. I don't have
Not right
one.
now.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you couldn't do it then. Yeah.
What? So 2022. That's the 5-year mark, right? We're sitting here in 2024. What's the evolution of this business now? You tried to frame awesome vacations as work. I'm going to let you go with that, right? That we're going to conferences and all that. I'm going to let you go with it.
Well, that was part of our vision. So part of our vision as we move forward was ultimately this type of healthcare should be standard of care. And so, what could be our part in that? And because of what you mentioned earlier, we've been doing this for so long, we've kind of been seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly. Not that we are never finished learning, but we're further along that trajectory than a lot of people are. So now what we do, we're part of an organization called the SSRP Institute, and we're original members of that group. And it's people, there's a small cadre of people like us who have been in this a long time. And so we learn together as a mastermind group, and then we also do outward facing education. So actually it is true that is our primarily most of our travel. So we do work now fortunately we get to go to great places, and people come and they, want to learn. But then, just that one vacation down in St. Armand's, that was actually vacation. The other is work. We'll be in Austin this coming weekend doing the same thing, like sitting around a table like this with about 10 other folks, brainstorming, talking about how to think through patients on a cellular level and how you manage those cases and about how to transition and create the practice that you're looking for.
So how do we, a lot of people have enough money to live this way and take this approach. How do we give the folks the way I grew up and the way you guys grew up? What's the best, just basic approach to start living a better, more healthy life through the paths you guys are talking about?
It's going to be the basics. I mean, you got to sleep when it's dark, get up when the sun comes up, really touch the earth. You have to be connected from a circadian rhythm standpoint to the ground. We live in a box and artificial lights all day long, and it's not good for your body's rhythm, really, from a hormone production standpoint. The food supply we have in this country is awful. It's very contaminated. It's very corporate. It's full of a bunch of unhealthy industrial seed oils, and it's all high sugar, high carb. The animals don't get fed well, and the product they produce is not high quality. There are ways to access that here, but it's not the most common way that people would try to get healthy food. They have to go and seek it out. I mean, they're a little ahead of us here. I'm not a huge think Europe has everything done right, but they do have food done better than we do here.
When I went to Europe a year and a half ago, I ate the same. My brain said I was eating the same way. Pastas and all these things, I felt different.
Yeah,
it's cleaner source food.
I felt different, and I didn't even have any thought that was going to happen. I was still more full. I ate these big dinners I shouldn't be eating, but it felt different.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. One of our daughters actually lives in Europe, and it's funny. She's visiting right now for a couple of weeks, but she'll feel the difference here. Even though we eat clean, right? We try our best. We, whole foods, organic, non-GMO, all of those things. It's still not as good.
You could get it right 4 or 5 meals in a row, and as soon as you go out to eat, 99% of the time you're going to get a bunch of smoked up, oxidized seed oils in all your food. And
but I guess so that's
it's very we have to be very.
It sounds awful.
Yeah.
So let's give hope here.
But we do have to be intentional, though, right?
Like
you have to try really hard.
Okay, so let's talk about.
So I
this.
mean, and that's it. You have to do the best you can. So really, if people just started to pull out some of the processed foods out of their diet, you got that standard American diet.
So what's
right?
that mean? I actually believe 70% of the people in this country, you say processed food, they don't know what that means.
So simple way would be just in the grocery store, you shop, on the perimeter where all the least vegetables and the freshly processed things are. Some of those things are not still clean, but you're going to get more of them there than you will in the middle where you've got everything in a box and a bag and a can and
with a lot of preservatives.
With a lot of preservatives in it.
And,
when you go down a bread aisle, and talk about a bread aisle in a grocery store.
Well, we're mostly paleo. I'm just going to tell you, so we don't eat a lot of that stuff anyway.
Okay.
So grains for a lot of people are inflammatory and the trigger that primary insult to the GI tract, which is the leaky gut or intestinal permeability that drives autoimmunity and inflammatory process in the body. So we don't spend a lot of time in the bread aisle. Now, I'm not going to say I never eat bread, but it's rare.
Well, we Paleo Mediterranean would say no gluten, no cow dairy, very little grain, good quality, less starchy vegetables. clean meats, so antibiotic, steroid, hormone-free, grass-fed, low glycemic index fruits, so lower sugar fruits like berries, lemons, limes, green apples, as opposed to always, because a lot of times, and I do a lot of the nutrition classes, I do cooking classes at our center and so forth, and it's just starting to make some changes. Turn the ship. Don't think it's got to be perfect, because it's actually never going to be perfect, especially here in the U.S., unfortunately. So if you just can start to eat more around the perimeter of the grocery, so fresh fruits and vegetables, and this, you hear it all the time, but it really is so impactful. That is the story that I told you originally. I didn't think we ate bad back in 2008 when I had that watershed moment with Carl at the island, but, because I was cooking lots of things, but it was, I was using processed foods as the base. I was making a lot of pastas and breads, homemade breads, but still a lot of gluten. I was already a mess, and I was making it worse in my GI tract.
It seems like sugar is like the worst thing in our society when it comes to food. Is that a it seems like it's the worst.
Well,
it's
not? Been weaponized as the high fructose corn syrup, essentially. That's the fructose is the most common sugar in fruit as well. So but when you take it and you weaponize it in the form of the high fructose corn syrup, it kind of becomes addictive. It's added to lots of foods just as a calorie content, also to sort of create the craving and the addiction piece of it. So, there's a lot of work done in the food industry to make you want to go back and buy something.
Yeah. And then too, I think it's a dirty trick. All of these artificial sweeteners. So sucralose, aspartame, NutraSweet, which now they've renamed. And so all of those. Now stevia, pure stevia, that's a leaf. That's something different.
Okay.
Monk fruit is something different. Maple syrup.
But we won't talk about the brand, but this thing I put in my water today is not good. You're going to tell me it's just not.
I don't.
It does have artificial sweeteners in it. Yeah, it does have artificial sweeteners in it. So that's something you would want to be mindful of, and here's why. So those artificial sweeteners, they still elicit that same insulin response from your pancreas, but you don't have any sugars. Plus, they're a neurotoxin. And they're devastating to your GI tract microbiome. All the good guys that live in your gut that you want in there, it kind of kills them off.
You guys are making me travel a path here.
And you're just going to go eat something else, even though that had no calories in it.
Because
it'll make you want to
go
eat a bunch of other stuff.
And hold on to fat.
Yeah, I'm going to go eat something terrible for lunch.
Insulin does make you hungry. It makes you want to digest.
Insulin's a storage hormone. You store fat, protein, carbs with insulin. It makes you want to store things.
I'm going to go eat something terrible for lunch. I don't know what I'm going to have, but it's going to be something terrible. So Mark needs to be more healthy. I come to you guys. Where do you start? Because I really am. I'm a guy, I don't take any medicine, right? I probably I get it. I don't. I'm like, there's something inside of me that's anti. It probably hurts me a time or two. I bet it probably does, but I'm just anti. Because I'll share some stuff off of here, some inflammation stuff and all that. But if I acted and ate right, my body, I'm just fortunate. It could be a strong body. It looks good. I could be that guy with the 6-packs and ripped and strong. I just don't, right? So where does a guy like me, 45 years old, probably 30 to 40 pounds overweight, really, and works 18-hour days? I've done it for 15 or 16 years. That's not healthy. You're like, you got to go to bed when I don't live a healthy life. Now, I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't do all those things, but I actually know how to live my life. Probably is almost as bad in some ways. So what's a guy like me do? Where do I start? Well, if I'm like, I want to feel better.
Our process at the office is you come in, we have a base set of labs we do on everybody. And then based on what your story is, there may be some selective things we add into that really sort of database collection. That takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get all of that back in. Then you'll come back in and sit down with me, and we literally have not as big as I would like it, but I got a big television on the wall. I'm going to put a bigger one there. But we put everything up there and look at it together. So the patients need to see the data. Most people can process this and see good, bad, high, low. And there's nothing that we keep from them. We show it to them. Try to use the internet as a tool to show them pictures and visuals to really grasp some of these reasons why we're making changes or suggesting changes. and then we'll develop a plan for lifestyle modification, for dietary modification. I'm not opposed to traditional medicines if you've got to that point. Some people come in and they're in an absolute disaster situation. We've got to sort of stop the leaking before we try to fix the boat. That's so sometimes you have to use traditional medicines, but our goals are to get it to where maybe you don't need those things. But sometimes if you've done enough damage, you just got to do what you got to do.
And then we go into optimization. I mean, looking at, maybe just some genetic predispositions, or here's where, this isn't a foregone conclusion, but you do have this genetic makeup. So you might want to make these choices. You and I might, live in the same, I don't know. I always like to use
the one I'll use
house.
commonly is like if I get a full on ginger, freckly, really light skinned person, and they came to me and said, I've decided that I'm moving to Hawaii to be a lifeguard. And I would go, that's fine. You can do that, but you better buy some stock in the sunscreen company or something to wear some clothes to cover you up, because it's probably not going to be good for your genetic potential to be exposed to the sun continuously when you're really not physiologically designed for that.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking we read a book with a bunch of people in my company. It was a lady named Marie Forleo, Everything's Figure Outable.
I love that book.
Yeah, it's awesome,
I
right?
love
And
that
so
book.
I'm just sitting here. I could sit in front. You could pull all my tests. I could sit down in front of the screen, and like everything's probably figure outable. Like 90-something% of it's figure outable.
Yeah, it's all about the epigenetics. What do you have genetic potentials, but what do you do with your lifestyle and your nutrition to modify those in a positive way or in a negative way? So we try to help patients identify those choices that they may be making, but they're unaware of.
Yeah.
And then we pull in the fun stuff. I think the regenerative medicine side is we do a lot of peptides, small molecules, things like that.
Oh,
and
regulators.
those are really fun, because then those, kind of prompt your body, remind it what it can do, maybe what it forgot to do, what it's a little sluggish on. And it's just, it's that amplitude.
It's the
that
story that you went through.
optimization.
It's the story of you, right?
It is. And then, but too, just in terms of optimally aging too, which I'm working on that.
I'm pretty sure that your wife is optimally aging. We sat down and I went, what are you doing different? And this guy's got some wrinkles and stuff over here.
Well, he's wonderful. He's a lot of it. He's right. I mean, Filipino and Italian, there is a different skin quality,
more olive skin.
But I will just tell you that, from his standpoint, what his genetics say should have happened to his health and so forth. Amazing what we've been able to head off at the pass.
Yeah.
Real blessing.
So these long hours that you worked, you said you worked hundreds of, what people don't know is you can actually work 100 to 120 hour week. I'm not saying, but you're sitting here, you went through it to build this entrepreneurial life. You did. And then now, can you reverse that? Like, do you think what you're going through now, you're fixing the damage that you did?
I'm fixing a lot of damage I did, whether it was not sleeping or not eating right.
That's what I need to hear.
Yeah.
I need to hear, because this thing I'm going through, whether people know, it's necessary if you want to build something significant.
Yeah.
You can't do it 8 hours a day. I've never seen how to do it. You've
No.
got to have hard work, commitment, dedication. And there's a period of your life, a season of your life, you have to do that.
But it does have consequences, whether it's on your physical health, on your family. If you're not there, there's going to be, if you're not there, there's garbage that comes along with that. So, but can you fix it all later on after the fact is probably not ideal. But I do think if you're going to commit those hours, you want to do it when you're younger, because your recuperative capacity or your ability to regenerate is much higher in your teens, 20s, and 30s than it's going to be 50s and on out. But that's the neat thing with some of the regenerative things in the peptide space we have. They can help you get back some of that regenerative capacity that you might have had in your 20s and 30s, and it's been quite good for me. I'll take it. I'm going to keep taking it. Yeah.
We have pictures. Like, I just sent him a picture yesterday of him 10 years ago, and he looks older 10 years ago than he does today.
Yeah, we need to do the same thing for me.
Yeah,
So
I feel better than I did a decade ago. I easily feel better.
But it's lifestyle modification, and it's the
Eating
other
right
regenerative, the different things that we, the tools that we have. So
Yeah. Is there passion within this? It seems like it's just an assumed given, but is there? Like, about who, about what, about all people? Like, I'll share the reason for the question is that like, in my world, running the real estate company, I don't necessarily go out at all and recruit already successful realtors. If they're already making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, they just want to come do it with me. Like, why? Like, what am I going to do for them? How am I going to really move anything forward? I want to take people that were like Mark, that didn't really necessarily have the path or anybody that could show them the way. Like, I want to help them like change their life. And so if it's just about money, you go recruit the person who's already done it because they can just come make you some money. But there's something special about helping the folks that maybe without you, if they didn't meet you, just maybe you change their life.
That's the thing. I mean, because, you know, I used to do all of the intake phone calls in the beginning, and, you know, and people would call and they would say, you know, honestly, we are, for so many folks, even now, and we have like forms that come in off our website where people, you know, put in their request of, hey, I want to talk to you, whatever. So many people, so many of the folks that we work with. Now, we do have the people that are just, hey, I just want to come and optimize. I want to age the best, you know, I want to, or I'm going through menopause or whatever. But even now, we still have so many folks that come to us because they've been everywhere and they've not gotten any answers, or nobody's heard them, or they've been told, oh, there's nothing wrong. You just have a Prozac deficiency or something like that, right? You know, and so first of all, that they feel heard when they come to see us. And that's, you know, that's the feedback, thankfully, that we still get to this day, which is, you know, we always, if we don't get that feedback, we're doing something wrong, you know, that somebody said doesn't feel like we heard them. But then that thankfully, you know, and it's a blessing to have these tools and to be have availed, you know, have been exposed to this knowledge and been able to work through it. But things that seem so, and I don't want to say run of the mill, but common for us now, that we're able to help people with that have not ever had help before, and it's changed their lives. That's the thing. That's the thing. I mean, you know, you just feel that right here because, you know, you made a difference for a person in his or her energy level, or their ability to have kids or play with their kids, or to, you know, just be able to function, to be able to get up out of bed. I mean, you know, and you can continue on that path because, you know, I mean, and that's huge.
Yeah.
You know,
What's this look like from a financial standpoint? I mean, I'm sitting here like, insurance companies aren't embracing this at the level they should. So what's that journey and the expense look like for an average person to really participate in this?
You probably know that. Yeah.
Well, so what we tell folks when they call us is we're a bit of a hybrid. So in that, we don't bill, code, or collect insurance for any of the things that we do, that Medical Transformation Center, those services performed. But we can take a flex spending or a health savings account, and that's really helpful for folks to be able to use that. Any of the diagnostics, I mean, by and large, the majority of any of the diagnostics we do, there are a few like different labs, maybe that if we need to peel down to that, they may just be a cash pay lab, but you always know what that is and you can say yay or nay. But the diagnostics that we'll send you for, or that you do in our office, we have Quest in our office, you know, they'll bill your insurance. So that part you can utilize your insurance benefits for. You know, people ask us, well, you know, sometimes, why don't you take insurance? Because if we did, then we'd be working for your insurance company.
Yeah, I work for the patients and I work to feed my family. I don't work for the hospital or the insurance company. And that puts us back closer to what you were saying that you were used to. Now there's a premium for that.
Yeah, there
in
is.
the 21st century. But it does untether me from a diagnostic standpoint, from a what do I want to order on you or test on you, or, you know, I don't care if your insurance doesn't like this medicine. Here's another way to get it, that we can get it for you that's practical. So we don't play that game, and I never will play it again.
Yeah. I mean, we work to find things that, you know, we're always looking, you know, with that eye, because nobody has unlimited resources, right? So we're looking at that.
A few do, like named Bezos and
yeah,
Musk.
yeah. That is true. That is true.
Well, a lot of it is prioritization.
Yeah, but it's prioritization. And so we try to find, you know, that balance. But again, I mean, we spend a lot of time and, you know, expense, right?
Yeah.
Training, learning, keeping ahead of that curve. So that's, you know, that's not.
You guys are
free.
like, you know, if you have one of those old German cars or an old Italian car, you want to go find like your mechanic who specializes in it. That's what you guys are. That's what you are for our bodies and for our life. right? You want to, because
It's a well, a lot of the stuff at the SSRP Institute where we do our cellular medicine training now and where we teach, it comes from human performance optimization. So it's really those tools that you use to optimize an athlete in performance space or in recovery space work quite well if you're just looking for the average Joe that wants to feel better, look better, function at a higher level, improve
extend
cognition.
life in a healthy way,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
this stuff.
And really, it's more about life quality. So health span, or is
As
really what we
opposed to
look for.
just
Just like I'm going to live to be
longevity,
100.
yeah.
Who wants to live to be 180 if you're sitting in a nursing home? I mean, it's not.
Yeah, nobody wants to.
Right.
Do you think that we will? Do you think we'll figure out how to live 200 or 300 years? Does the physician, and you've thought about these things?
Right now, I think we're probably shooting for 140, 150. Really,
I believe that's going to happen.
Yeah. I think that's
Right?
certainly could happen. There are some limitations to the physiology of the machine. So I don't know that in any time that I'm going to be practicing, we're going to see that. With barring some exponential or disruptive innovation that it's out there in the research space.
Well, I mean, what would have to happen? We'd just be able to have to regenerate new hearts and new organs, right?
Well,
And
we can
brain tissue.
regenerate things and get them to grow. Sometimes they grow into things we don't want.
Yeah.
That's really the problem. So how do you control that? There's some naturally built-in sort of self-regulating things that happen in the system naturally, and when you clone things or turn machines on just to reproduce automatically without any of that natural built-in inherent self-regulation, then you end up with increased risks of cancers and all sorts of diseases that we don't really want to live into.
Aren't these human bodies just fascinating?
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's an amazing machine.
Every time I think about it, my brain starts hurting because the things that you understand as a physician that I don't, but I can comprehend some of the functionality and how it goes together. It's incredible what it does.
Yeah, it's
When we
very
s-
complex.
It's complex.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are
infinitely complex. And that's the thing I teach a lot of when I taught residents early on. I was like, I know you think you know a lot, you do know a lot. I said, but you really want to kind of this is the philosophy I had, was like, there's always a lot more that I don't know than what I do know. And that keeps some humility about the way you go about practicing, but it also lets you know that you do have some boundaries to what you're able to do. And if you understand what your limits are, you're not going to get in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, think about, from the biggest unknown still is from a neurological standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's neurologists in the practice of neurology. Like, there's so much about the brain we still don't know, right?
Right.
That's wild that you can go through med school, be taught the functionality and all. I've seen an organic chemistry chart. I had some connection with it. That was like somebody's brain hurt a long time ago in med school that I knew well. And I saw that on a poster board. And I went, you have to learn what? That seemed like the most difficult class that any human could ever go through, an organic chemistry class.
Well, and what's interesting now is when I went to school, you learned about that, and we did have to learn all of those pathways, and then pretty quickly you just basically forgot them all because you then went into the diagnosing and then handing out pills and things. So what's interesting now is that where I've trained now is we actually relearn those pathways and then apply them at a cellular health level, because really when you think about the complexity of the body, it is super complex, and if you try to look at that overall picture, it's really hard to grasp what's going on, and fix it. So, but if you can fix the cell, how the cellular physiology is able to assimilate, process energy, make proteins, fold them properly, decide they're inappropriately folded and get rid of them if they're bad. I mean, that optimizing those spaces really makes the whole machine work better.
So to get an answer here, I've always had this response without me being a doctor. Are there cancer cells in our body all the time?
Well, your body screws up on a regular basis, but it's got mechanisms to identify that and then correct it, and it does a really, really good job at it.
And when we lack health, some of those things
don't work as well.
There
Right.
you go.
Right.
Wow, what else are we going to talk about here, guys? You guys are fun and good people. We could talk about all your amazing kids. They're living in Europe and all. Where in Europe is one living?
She lives in the volcanic region in Giot, kind of central.
France.
Yeah, central. Yeah, kind of central.
It seems like that's somewhere where there's nothing going on.
They
She
moved
was
there
in
during
Montpellier.
COVID, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
she was in almost Nice.
No, she was in Montpellier,
Yeah.
and it was so locked down. that
Yeah,
after
the French
that
lock. You talk about COVID.
experience-
French lockdown and COVID. It was like you had little cell phones that said you're going too far outside your perimeter.
Tracking you.
Yeah, you were
they
tracked.
were tracking people
Yeah.
in France.
So
Wow.
they decided to move to the country.
All right, so you guys are sitting here. I don't know why we use these. I wish we didn't use ages as numbers, how we feel, but you're sitting here at 60 and 61.
62.
Sorry, 60.
He's 62. I guess I'm 60 and 3/4.
Working on her 61st year.
Yes, there you go.
So you had a 5-year plan. You hit it and exceeded it. What's the next plan?
Well, we're adding new physicians. We added one this year into the practice. So, but we're looking for ones that want to do this as opposed to, I just need to get out of the traditional system. So we're looking for motivated people that are engaged in this space. And we found one. We have another one we're looking at, and to allow the practice to become, not that I have to be there every day, to get it to that point. I don't think I'm not going to be there anytime soon, but we want to have that generational ability to have this continue on.
There are other physicians, me being also in the commercial office space business. There's a physician that recently approached us that wants to lease space. She's leaving the big practice and waiting on some other physicians also to be done with their non-competes to come and do it the way. I don't know if it's in depth with you guys, but it's more of a cash system.
Mhm.
It's more of direct to the customer, to the client, to the patient. And so it's coming back.
It is. Yeah.
So you feel it too.
Oh yeah. Well, it's always kind of up and down. In my 40 years of doing this, there's been more than one assimilation of everything into the central unit, and then people peel off of it. So it's just gotten a lot further this time. Now there probably is a point where they could attempt to assimilate everyone into that unit if you wanted to get health care, and that's when you probably need to go to Costa Rica or something, or get out of
Like the stem cell thing. What's up with the stem cell world?
Stem cells, in this country, you can harvest stem cells, mesenchymal stem cells is what they're called, from fat or from bone marrow out of an individual, and they autologously put them back in that same person. Right. There are some limits on what we can access as far as, stem cells that didn't come from you. Mm-hmm. Okay. There are places in the world you can get that. You do want to make sure that the harvesting of those products was done in an ethical space, right?
How do we know that is not being?
Well, it's hard to know, right? So it's hard to know. I mean, literally, some of them can come from aborted fetal products, right? And most people don't want to know that somebody else got harmed in the process of them getting some benefit out of it. So we don't use any of those products in our space. So, but there are, the ability to optimize the person, to get them functioning the best they can, make them. I always tell the patients, why don't you use my stem cells and put them in my knee? And I'm like, well, fat, drunk, and diabetic stem cells are not the ones you want, right? So we've got to fix that stuff first, and then maybe we can get your stem cells and put them in your knee.
Yeah.
They're not going to do you any good in the current condition you're in.
I hear a lot of people that are having success wear rotator cuffs and all types of joints, and it's like, hey, stem cells have helped some folks.
Yeah.
Doesn't help everyone.
I did my shoulder.
You did.
Yeah. We do those in the office for orthopedic reasons and for some cosmetic reasons. They're a way to safely enhance collagen and regeneration in skin and
So
I did my face too.
You did?
Yeah. I did when we were learning. When we were learning that, I was the guinea pig.
You know what? Here's the thing though. I was just walking around. I just don't even care what people think about me most of the time. I was walking around down Sarasota recently. We talked about it in St. Armand Circle. There's a lot of Botox down there.
Oh, yeah.
And I just walked around, and here's what I said this to the person I was walking with, not in judgment of them, other than I was like, they think they look good. It's gone beyond the point.
Yeah. So that's a good point, because I think I told you earlier, we were in timeshare for quite a while, tiny little space. It was really just consultation that we did, right? And then we built actually our facility back in the fall of 2021. So we've been in
where are we
almost 3 years.
now?
We're
in Louisville.
in Louisville, in on the east end in Anchorage,
Okay.
on that side.
Yep.
So we built that space in 2021, moved in, and when we did, we built it so that we could do more services and add more things. And what we had learned over just our time of more just consultation, right, is that as people started to feel better and get healthier, they did want to look better and do things, as it related maybe aesthetically and that kind of thing. But for us, I mean, we spend so much time cleaning people up, right? And getting and detoxing them and all those things. So, and each person has to make their own decisions. But for us, we couldn't in good conscience say, okay, now we're offering, neurotoxins and fillers and so forth. So we've been mindful to curate some really cool, like regenerative aesthetic devices that use energy and physics to remodel, skin and musculature. And then also things like stem cells and exosomes and peptides and things like that can do that too. So it's nice to use the prompts to get the body to do it using maybe physics or
well,
little
we
messengers.
were in Orlando this weekend, and I gave a presentation on sort of that package of how you can, when you make the body more healthy, you clean out what the toxins of the environment have filled it with over the years, improve hormone status, and use things like some of the neat peptide tools we have. When you combine that with some of these aesthetic procedures, you get a much improved outcome, better healing, less scar formation, and they're just wonderful tools to add in that space without giving somebody something that potentially was going to make them sick 5 years down the stream.
Yeah, I think I was saying it because whatever you did twice, you look healthy and good. But my point was, I saw a lot of people over 2 or 3 days that didn't.
Oh, I know. Well, I mean,
It just
I
didn't.
think it becomes kind of, it takes a life of its own. And then,
Yeah.
I want to fix this one. And then I fix this one. And then all of a sudden nothing moves, right? Or
Just doesn't look healthy.
Or it looks
Yeah.
kind of almost like cartoonish sometimes. I mean,
Yeah.
and
It's unfortunate.
It's
They're trying to heal something from within on the outside.
Yeah.
So you have a plan. Are you going to open more locations, or is this going to be Louisville? Are we going to franchise this thing? What are we going to do?
We're working on some things with that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they're not allowed to tell us the secrets of things.
No. We're working on that. That's a slow process because again,
we're constantly
It's
improving our
aligning-
day to day
yeah.
process at the office. But part of that is to get it in alignment to where it can be
duplicated.
You want to lease some space and come to Northern Kentucky? I have office space I can lease you guys. Why would you
Sure.
like? Would you like to do this? Maybe we can talk. We can
Yeah.
make something happen. So what do you think if life goes as planned? What conversation are we sitting here having in a decade, in 10 more years?
Well, the first thing we want to do, our first thing was we wanted to, by the spring of next year, spend at least 3 weeks in Hawaii doing remote healthcare, because I've got to that point where I have a large remote population. So I've got pretty good internet down there. So if I could spend, 3 weeks on the north shore of Oahu at the pipeline, just like watching the surf for a while, I would do that. So that's my short-term goal. Yeah,
It sounds like that's going to happen. It's
Yeah,
probably already
yeah.
pretty much booked.
Yeah. Well, like we said earlier, I mean, in 10 years, this is standard of care. And knowing that we were able to contribute to that, that's exciting. That piece is exciting. And that we have created systems and processes that, again, are part of that proliferation. So then that's a different model. And then we are still at that point. I don't even know. Are we out teaching and training in 10 years, or are we
You
doing
might as well
something
be.
completely different?
Well, I did not go into this thinking I'm going to be an early adopter and out in front. It's just the way it happened, So, and I feel fortunate that we got through that space and have had reasonable amount of success in this space, because a lot of early adopters get pilloried at the post.
They just get ruined.
Yeah. So we made it through that little window to have some success in
And
this
to
space.
be fair, I'll say this because I know you won't ever say it. What enabled us to do that was because he had such a solid reputation as a primary care physician in the community. People knew, because people would send us their hard cases, right? And so they knew that, if Carl Paige is doing this, I've never heard of it. Maybe he's crazy, but honestly, if he's doing it, I might want to take a look at it. So we've been fortunate to where the other physicians in the community don't, by and large, the most of them, right, don't look at him as like a weirdo or a competition, because we don't
Some
take
woo-woo shit or something.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And because we have blended, and I always tell people, we have not thrown away our traditional tools. We have just added on, which is wonderful to be able to add on all these regenerative, nutrition and metabolic, genetic, all of these different tools to really have something larger to offer people. And so that's been, we have, a lot of healthcare professionals who we're able to take care of, which is that's a testimony. And so I think that's a blessing. And he won't say that out loud. So I will. And I think that's what's allowed us to continue, is that we've had that gravitas of a solid base.
See, you guys, I almost said that 45 minutes ago and evoked a community. I knew that the community looked at him that way. You can just tell. And so then I'm like, see, we're going to laugh about this in this statement because the season we're in. See, there's a lot more people like you out there. Y'all are the ones who need to be the leaders and the presidents and the people that we listen to. Like, you're too humble to say it and stuff. But this approach in this conversation today, you guys are smart, intellectual people that are still normal. No, for real. Because you either usually come from Harvard and Yale and all the Ivy Leagues and think you're better than other folks and work on Wall Street and work for Goldman. You're either a part of this segment that thinks that you're just domineering over the rest of the world, or you're normal. But you guys have the intellect that matches those people now. So you've got something to share with the world and say. And so what's the advice that you would give? What do you just tell the world now? Like, what do you tell us about? What do you tell us?
I would tell people when the mass of people are going in the one direction and they think they all got it right, you probably should go in the other direction, because the group think is never right in my experience. It's just like in school. There's a bell curve and there's somebody way over on one end of it. And there's all the people in the middle that are going to get C's. You're going with that decision. Is that what you want? Is that what you think is right? It's just, I always wanted A's. I got to get an A.
But you're asking people to think.
Right. They got to think, and they don't want to take. To think and to be willing to do something that not everybody agrees with. It's okay to do that. That's the only way you're going to end up in the right direction. You might step on a few landmines in that process, but you have to be willing to take that risk. And I think that's probably, what we were comfortable with. Some of it, we had to take the risk. So it was kind of like,
and some things blew up.
And some things blew up on the way, right?
But you guys raised your hand and you said, let's do the hard things.
Yeah, we stepped out there and took some bullets in this space. Yeah.
And I actually think that all of this probably arose in your lives earlier because you were young parents, because you started dealing with the hard things and the things society was laying down, and you choose to go all in and make that. That's it. I found out in the toughest moments of my life, you look back and they've been the best. They've just been the best. They've been the moments that I've learned the greatest amount. They've moved me forward on a trajectory of learning and knowledge and understanding better. In the moment when you're right in the pit of it, it sucks.
Yeah.
Right. It's like day to day and hour to hour. Yeah. But once you get through it, because we all have gotten through it, we're sitting here. You look back, and then now you have more tools in the tool belt to approach the other harder things in life.
Right.
And I just know daily, what's the best thing to do, the hard thing.
Yeah. Eat that frog, right?
Eat the hard thing. So what do you tell people? You're not allowed to tell them the same thing.
I do aerobics before I hit the weights because I hate aerobics. That's fine.
do the hard things, right?
Is that the hard thing?
That's what they say about make the bed, right?
Yeah.
The same thing.
Yeah, make the bed.
Yeah.
Make the bed.
It doesn't have to be some crazy, amazing, but the core of who you are. What do you tell the world? Probably the things you've told your kids forever. What do you tell the world? I just want to say stop being stupid. That's what I tell them. Stop thinking, stop being stupid. But
well, I want to say the same thing as Carl, but it's similar. Good gosh, you live with somebody for this long, right? You kind of have a little bit of similarity, but it really is just open your eyes and look around and see what's happening and think about, do you really want to buy into this agenda? Do you really want to buy into that? Or, what do you see for your life? What do you really want for your life? And is it just this numb, go with the flow, easy? I'm not saying everybody has an easy life. I'm not saying that, but there's just so much focus on convenience and ease and, oh, it shouldn't be hard, or you owe it to me, or that sense of entitlement. There's a lot of that, like we were talking about earlier. It doesn't feel good unless you work for it.
I know that.
There's not a payoff, really. It might be a short-term payoff, but work for your shit,
How do they start this journey? If someone was never taught this, right? let's say they maybe even didn't finish high school, but someone's listening to this. Where do they start this journey? Is it picking up a book? Is that like what's this journey of learning? Because you're learning and teaching yourself something, right? And your mind is growing. Reading books, it's funny. So I'll share with, as you guys think about this. I remember in some of my poorest days, because I've been through a couple different moments. I mean, there was a housing crisis back in 2009, and that was the business I was in. So it was almost a disaster. Yeah, I was 3 weeks away from total financial disaster in my life. And for some reason, like I turned off cable, couldn't afford cable, right? Everybody saw me as a successful 6-figure realtor. It's like, well, I knew how to do that well, but things weren't going well. And I decided to open this company 3 months before the bubble burst. And, but, so since I turned off cable, I only had local channels. And up here it was PBS, it was a channel 48. And I would listen to Charlie Rose in the evening, just interview people, all sorts of people. And then I came across a guy named Wayne Dyer.
Yeah.
Dr. Wayne Dyer. And it was the beginning of my mind growing in different ways. And I'm not just some follower of this guy and all that stuff, but he was in Hawaii. I just started thinking differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I did. I started listening to people that had different thoughts or different ways or different ideas. And he talked in such a calm manner.
Yeah, he really does have that.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was it for me. But is it meditation? I'm not a meditation guy, but it helps so many people.
Yeah.
Is it some of the Eastern medicines and philosophies? Is it like Confucius? Is it picking up meditations by Marcus Aurelius? Like what do you think? Where can people start the journey?
Well, I think part of it is being open to other possibilities, being willing to look at your worldview and understand that it's yours. That's your worldview, and think about expanding that. You know, being willing to go, okay, what do I not see? I always, personally, I'm doing that a lot lately regarding some things, but I'm always trying to find out, okay, where's my blind spot? Because we have one, right? We just don't know it. And so if we can start to think that way more often, I think that's helpful because it does expand your mind, to your point, and it helps them with personal development and so forth.
So I think that's where meditation as a concept or prayer or however you want to approach that, it's dialing back the background noise of just day-to-day life. And, a lot of the answers people want they're out there, but you don't see them. I mean, this stuff's walked right in front of you. I mean, I've missed who knows how many opportunities because it just went right by me and I wasn't able to see it, So to be able to relax, dial down that background noise of life and just try to process what's out there. And you'll see things that are there for you. But if you're, stuck in the moment and of the day-to-day rut of things, it's going to walk right past you and you're going to miss it.
My best moments now in conversations are listening to someone that has an opposing view of mine and just listening and saying, what if? Doesn't mean I have to end up agreeing to them, but just process it.
Right.
Yeah.
Process it and say, well, what if they're right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if that's more of a truth? That's evolved my brain, my emotional intelligence, being able to calm down, realizing I'm not the starring show in everybody else's world.
There's a different point of view.
Yeah. And I think that's threatening to so many people.
It can be because it's like, wait a minute, what? And it kind of dovetails into self-esteem, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. Where do we find? Is there like one website to find you?
medicaltransformationcenter.com.
Look at you guys. So it's not like MTC. So medical transformation.
Somebody else owned that. I tried to get it.
Yeah, we
You
tried.
could buy it.
Yeah, it could. It was very expensive.
Anything else?
Dot whatever, something else.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
What do we miss? What else you want to share?
You got to intervene with these patients and with people before they're sick. And the way the current model is it waits till you're sick. And sometimes it's too late. You miss out on things. So,
yeah, and stop watching advertisements on TV for medications.
Oh God, it's awful.
It's terrible.
It's awful.
It's terrible. Yeah. But what I want to tell people is that, hey, like you're responsible. Like this is on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's in your doctor's fault.
Right.
Like we know they can do better. You learn to do better, right?
Right.
But it's like, hey, this is your responsibility.
Yeah, people need to own their own health, right?
Right.
Is the thing. And when they do, it's remarkable. They see they're able to set goals and then achieve goals when they just are dependent on the healthcare system to make them healthy, it doesn't work. It's a broken
Right.
paradigm.
Yeah. And we, interestingly, we did actually, like when we were talking, I think before we started recording, we too shut down, in 2020 in March, right? March 18th, I think we shut down thinking it was just going to be for a few weeks. We stayed home a year. We had our team all remote. We had a whole system. And what was interesting is that we grew. We grew during that year. And then we actually started that building the following year and moved into it larger than what we had been pre-COVID. And what was, I think the reason is because a lot of folks did realize, hey, I need to take responsibility because the party line isn't necessarily going to take care of me.
Yeah. I think that's a great place to end it. Thank you guys. So Medical Transformation Center.com. You are awesome. The content team will give you all sorts of love. And if you're in Louisville, and I'm sure people are starting to come to you from other places and stuff too.
We have people from all over.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And being able to do it remotely now is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's really good. Thank you all for coming in. Spread the love, spread the story. I think personally, it feels right. What you're doing to me, it feels right. So thank you for doing the things that are right.
Thanks.
And raising 8 kids for me not having any. All right,
You're
guys.
welcome.
Yep. All right.